If you have an erection lasting longer than 4 hours, be sure to ask your doctor about Acrisure. That's
Acrisure,
what that's what
exactly.
that's what
That's
the
not,
Steelers' new stadium
it's,
sounds like.
it's
One of
not.
those awful.
I had no idea where that was going. No idea where that was going. Acrisure. It's
Be sure to ask your doctor if Acrisure is right for you.
yeah, may cause sudden bleeding,
Yeah,
loss of feeling,
may
and
cause
diarrhea.
sudden disappointment,
Yeah,
massive
a
disappointment, and
massive disappointment.
nobody I have seen, at least on the social media sphere, thinks that Acrisure Stadium sounds good.
Well, question: they're
Terrible.
an insurance brokerage firm, right? So
Correct.
my thought, this is just one of those things that's so funny
Out
about
of
sport.
Michigan, by the way, not even
Yeah,
like a Pittsburgh-based company.
what's so funny about sports is stuff like this, where a just dumb brain. I would have never thought, like, oh yeah, I wonder what the lease is for Heinz on the naming of that stadium in Pittsburgh. Like, that never would have occurred to me that like that wouldn't ever be Heinz Field. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, you just think it's
dumb
gonna stay
football
in
brain.
perpetuity.
And yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, that is so weird. So weird. And it's one of
They
those.
had Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's because Heinz has such a great nickname for that stadium, and like the look of it, the yellow and the mustard, or the ketchup, and they do. But like, like the Bears, or like Soldier Field, or even, I bet the better example is like the Chiefs. They just sold the naming rights to the field, but it's still Arrowhead. So it's
Yeah.
like
Such and such
QRHS.
field at Arrowhead
Yes,
Stadium or
but it's
something.
still like, so, and they have to
Yeah.
say that, like poor Mitch Holzhaus has like this mouthful. It's like QHSSSY a field here at Arrowhead Stadium. But like, that's why I think it's so important for like these owners. I mean, it was like the Staples Center, when the Staples Center just changed in LA. When you're building your stadium, you should give it a name and then have it just a sponsor sponsor the field or the naming, rights with it. So it's still just like, because people always pull that, well, what if the Cubs sell, Wrigley Field? It's like, well, Wrigley Gum hasn't paid a dime in like
Yeah.
60 years. It's more just that's historically just kind of fallen into it. And if that ever sells, it would be like Toyota presents Wrigley Field. You know what I mean? It would never be
Right. You can change the sponsorships in and out, but the name of what's being sold remains the same.
absolutely. Heinz is just one of those caught me completely off guard.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like it's something that I forgot was this year, because I had known in previous years that they were coming up on the end of the contract. I was also just thinking, well, clearly they're going to
resign.
re-up and be able to figure out how to do that. Heinz, though, for perspective, over the 20-year period that they had the field, they paid a total of 55 million. So they were paying roughly, what, 2.5 million per year.
That's
Uh,
huge. I mean,
and
I'm sure the
so
Steelers wanted a lot of money.
the Steelers were like, we need to, have some. And they just had the press conference today, and Art Rooney said, we need to be in line with the other competitors in this field. SoFi, for instance, is paying upwards of 40 million per. So we're talking about
Yes.
20
Yeah.
times the amount that Heinz was paying for that field. Now Heinz is a part of
Yeah.
Pittsburgh history. They're headquartered there, and H.J. Heinz was literally from Pittsburgh, so they had roots there. And I think that's what a lot of fans were disappointed in that if it was going to be anything, have it be something else like a Permane Brothers, or I don't know, whatever. But
Well,
this
or
deal is
they'll cut.
likely in the realm of about, I've heard, 150 million. So that's closer.
So probably 15 years, 10 million a year,
Yeah,
something like that.
a
A
little bit
deal to,
closer to that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, listen, SoFi is SoFi, and it's beautiful. It's brand new, so they're going to pay that new stadium, like those rights. Yeah, are going to be, and
Yeah,
it's
and it's
LA
in LA, so you got to
prime
pay for that.
time. You're going to host a lot more big concerts there that you get your name to versus a Pittsburgh. You lose a lot of that for the outdoor.
You're not getting
stadium
a
stuff.
Super Bowl played in Pittsburgh anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly right. I will say this though. You'd like to have thought that at least Heinz and them could have worked out a deal of like, all right, we want you, hometown discount, but to stay. It's just wild. Acrisure, you know,
It does not roll off the tongue.
You feel so, and you feel bad for them. Like, I mean, it's the same thing, like, it's Chicago in the history of, like, Willis Tower. Like, I think over time now, it has settled in a little bit more. Like, I'm not one of those people who, like, I refuse to call it Willis Tower. I think 99% of the time I'll still call it the Sears. But
yeah, because you, like, to me, I still think of it that way. Even I'm not even trying to. It's just how it.
It is how it is. But I think Willis has lasted long enough now too to have some. I mean, you say Willis Tower, you know what you're talking about now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And in a funny way, I think Acrisure, they're smart enough to have known that, like, there's going to be such a backlash. I looked up Acrisure this weekend. I bet the hits on their website and, like, the Google searches for Acrisure, highest they've ever been. So, I mean, that alone was worth it. And now I do feel like, you know, football fans will, over the next couple of years, you jokingly be like, well, it'll always be Heinz, but you'll know when you say Acrisure, you'll know, like, it's Pittsburgh. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it'll have its way with it. And it is kind of funny that it came with the whole new era of Pittsburgh Steelers football. You know, it's like they're literally starting fresh. So it's, you know, Heinz ended with Ben, and, you know, they had their run there for 20 years, and now it's, you know, it went from Three Rivers Stadium, where they tore it down, Heinz Field. That it has always been that, with this new stadium. I've already seen some people saying that they're going to nickname it the Shore or whatever, like Acrisure. We're going down to the shore type of thing.
I don't hate
maybe
that.
That'll stick. I don't know.
The river shoreline. Yeah. I mean, it's again, it's a word of the wise for anyone out there. Bears, you're about to build a stadium in Arlington Heights. Think about that. Name it Palace Stadium or something like that, brought to you by United. You know what I mean? United Field at Palace Stadium. You know,
right. Yeah.
Find a way to be smart in that. And I'm sure there's, you know, like, those are the type of things. Be smart about it. Find a way to be smart about stuff like that. Or else the Bears won't be guaranteed. It'll be something or absolutely horrific and stupid. But, you know, we'll digress. We'll get to that when it sadly digresses to that.
Well, I am interested in your take, Mark, as we get ready for the football lounge here, and we'll give a quick preview as to what's coming up here. We're going to discuss some big news, the Baker Mayfield trade, some news on the Gronkowski front. We've got a look at the ESPN comprehensive top 10 current NFL quarterback list.
What a joke.
They polled executives, coaches, and players throughout the league to compile this list. And then finally, Mark has an interesting look at the greatest quarterbacks for each franchise throughout history. And we're going to go over the, I believe, 6 that we disagree on. So stay tuned for that. But Mark, before we get to any of that, since we're on the stadium topic, there was news coming out about, you know, over the last week or so about the Bears. You know, Mayor Lightfoot wanted to propose putting a dome on Soldier Field. They seemingly just completely put the kibosh on that and said, nah, we're not interested. But what were your thoughts on that move? And where do you think you see this progressing? I mean, obviously they got the bid to buy it. It seems like an inevitability they're going to be in Arlington Heights. But what do you feel about where this is going, I guess?
I mean, that's it's all now for anything from here on out is just saving face. Lori has to do that in the city of Chicago. Remember, the city of Chicago and the Park District own Soldier Field, right? So the Bears are just a lease to them. And obviously, anyone who owns any property, you don't want to lose good renters who bring in every year, record-setting attendance. They always sell out. I mean, the Bears are that for them. They're an amazing, amazing tenant, and they don't want to lose them, but they've lost them. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's just the landlord going to you after you've already told them, no, I'm out. I'm going to move. And the landlord making a last-ditch effort, like, all right, fine. I'll finally put the washer and dryer in unit. I'll finally do it. And you're like, yeah, no, I've literally already bought the property. I'm building a house right now. Like I'm not going to be here in a year. It's just too little too late. And again, the Bears wouldn't have left Soldier Field ever if Arlington Park hadn't come open. There are so many things had to fall into place. I'm beyond, here we are almost a year later from all of that going down. And it's one of those things that, again, like, I'm so comfortable with it now. I'm just so comfortable with it. And I think Bears fans will be in the future going forward, especially once you start getting, here's what the stadium will look like, here's the timetable, X, Y, Z, and all the good things that'll come out of it. What's the capacity look like? And for Chicago, Soldier Field will be the city of Chicago needs to continue updating Soldier Field. It's not going to go away. There's just no reason for them to tear it down or to go away.
Yeah, they could still make it a dome, and
it would still do them well to dome it and to have some sort of dome, because you can continue to have events longer into the fall or earlier into the spring. But it's still Chicago in the winter, so until you completely dome it off, you're not going. It's just not going to be a year-round venue. I don't think they should completely dome it off. If they do anything, it would have to be some sort of contraption that half roofs it, half, you know what I mean, open a roof, close roof type of thing, because Chicago lakefront in the summer, you just literally can't beat it anywhere in the country. So you don't want to lose Kenny Chesney playing outdoors, you know what I mean,
right,
along
absolutely.
the lakefront in that venue. And again, they have the Fire are a tenant there. It will just increase the amount of concerts that are there. It will increase the amount of events that come to Chicago. They use that stadium for. I think in the end, it's good. I mean, it's going to be magnificent still for the city. They'll get great use out of it. It'll expand the use of Soldier Field for so many other ways. And the Bears will be more able to be more competitive for the next, 40 years of their franchise, 2030 to 20, at least 20 years, 2030 to 2050, of like when that stadium is still new and considered, Jerry's World is coming up on close to the 20th anniversary, and it's still thought of in that way as a magnificent stadium. So you get about a 20-year grace period when you build a brand new stadium like that to be thought of in that regard. So the Bears need some sort of jolt. So again, any sort of frustration is gone. That literally now, any stories you get like that, it's just Lori trying to say, well, we tried. Listen, we're throwing everything at them. The Bears are just evil and they're leaving us. They got to paint it like that.
I mean, and if you're Chicago, you gotta do that, because you have to.
Yeah,
you have to show that you don't want them to leave, of course, and they
absolutely.
Really don't. Yeah, maybe Northwestern finds a home there. That could be. That could certainly be an idea.
The Northwestern and Notre Dame, Dame, they will find it will be a college football venue through September, especially the expanse of the Big Ten. Imagine USC, Ohio State, neutral site, Chicago, early September. That's fucking awesome. You know what I mean? Soldier Field, it'll open Soldier Field up.
And if you do the dome, maybe Chicago would be a great place for a bowl game. Like you could find, maybe a way to do that. You'd have to get it domed for that game.
Well, see, the thing about it is the new stadium will be a dome. So the Bears will host the Bears will host the Super Bowl. Chicago will host the Super Bowl with the new stadium.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yes and no. Having the ability to cover it in ways expands the use of like more big artists saying, yeah, I'll play a summer show in Chicago, because worst comes to worst, we can still play in a rain. You know what I mean? Like we can cover it up, do things like that without having to fully dome it. Hey, there's possibilities. Again, it's the story is them. This is just PR stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the news broke last week right after we recorded, basically. Yeah. It was a day later. Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers. This has been something we've been speculating for quite some time this offseason. Who were the Panthers going to get? Was it going to be Jimmy G? Was it going to be Baker? Or were they just going to mail it in and try and stick with Sam Darnold or the rookie Matt Corral this season? But that has been answered as the Panthers trade for Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns in a crazy deal. In which, Baker ended up having to take about a $3 million pay cut. And then on top of it, the Browns have eaten roughly half that salary. So the Panthers right now get him at $5 million this year, with the capability of that being $9 million if he plays 70% of the games, which we all anticipate he will. But that is the case right now with Baker Mayfield. And look, at the end of the day, I know people are saying about, the Sam Darnold thing. Well, you're paying it. You got him the 5th-year option. Like, you're going to be putting money into that. If you think about what they're spending in their quarterback room, it's still under $30 million total for 4 quarterbacks that they have, which is still more of a deal than a lot of teams have.
No.
So even if Baker cost an extra 10 million, I probably would have been on board with the move. Given largely that this is a trying to keep my job decision for Scott Fitterer and for Matt Rule, this was a smart move for them to go and get someone. And Baker was not going to be back with the Browns. So, what were your initial thoughts on that trade for both sides of this deal?
A couple things. The way the trade actually worked lets you know. That's the story. You got to read between the tea leaves. If Carolina was guaranteeing Baker's going to be our starter no matter what, we want to get this guy, they wouldn't have forced Baker to take a pay cut. Remember, if you look at the money, it breaks down. Baker was owed 18.85, I think it was. Browns are paying 10, Panthers are paying like 5, and then basically Baker had to give up the other 3. So don't be fooled into this whole thing that oh no, he's our guy, we got our guy, this is great. I think behind the scenes what the Panthers look at this as is we need to have another chance to figure out if Matt Rule is actually the guy. And I think the owner fairly said, and I think probably Matt Rule made his case to the management and the owner saying, listen, since I've been here, I have not had a chance with what we know talented quarterback to show you what my offense looks like with a guaranteed starter in the league. Baker, for all his faults, is a guaranteed starter in this league. He's a starting quarterback. Sam Darnold, it looks like, just may not be a starting quarterback. And I'm not so sure that Sam doesn't have a chance to win the job. I think it's obviously Baker's. They want Baker to start it because, again, I think it goes back to that Matt Rule. The hope is, hey, Baker's probably not the long-term answer, but I can show you if we find the long-term answer, my offense and my coaching with whoever that quarterback is the answer. So there's a lot of those things at play. I think that is the kind of story behind the story. Now they're all going to say, no, this is great, blah, 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 and kind of lie to you in that way. But the money, follow the money. The money tells you what they're actually saying. I think for Baker, awesome opportunity. Awesome opportunity. Think about how many first-round quarterbacks in the last 10, 15 years really didn't get a second chance. I mean, Mitch didn't get his second chance right away. He's going to have a chance, but now it's really not a second chance to ever be, we're going to build around Mitch Trubisky unless he completely balls out. And even then, it won't be with Pittsburgh. Someone else will have to take that opportunity to say, we want to build around Mitch. Baker, I really do think, has a chance to earn a 3-year or multi-year contract to be the starter for the Panthers if he balls out, plays really, really well, and can find a way to get Carolina to a playoff berth to put them in a spot where they're going to be out of the draft picks for the top quarterbacks, and he plays well enough, especially with Brady retiring, to feel like, hey, this division could be ours if we build around Baker with this young, good defense and a couple other pieces. Now, it's a lot of what ifs, and he needs a lot of help. And there are some good pieces of Carolina. The roster. So I think that's why Baker was willing to take the pay cut to do this, because I think he knows with the division, if he says to himself, I can get us to 9 wins, I can get us to a wild card berth, Tom Brady retiring, if I could throw for 26 touchdowns, less than 12 interceptions, that's always my kind of golden rule. It's certainly over that 2-1 mark, and have a really productive season healthy. There's no reason why Carolina wouldn't look at that and go, crap, Atlanta's in quarterback chaos. Obviously, if the Panthers do that well, the Saints won't have done that well, and Brady's retiring. So we got to roll with Baker Mayfield because we have a chance to win our division 2 of the next 3 years, and you never know. All you got to do is get into the playoffs. Never know what's going to happen, especially in the weaker NFC. So it's a huge opportunity, but it's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously pressure's on for Sam Darnold here because you are fighting for your career.
Yeah, career.
Essentially, because if you don't win this starting job, you might unfortunately be setting yourself up to be a career backup if that's even the case moving forward.
Just even a guy in the NFL at that point.
Yeah, right. Baker, that whole situation was unique because neither side had leverage. The Browns didn't have leverage because everyone knew that there were only 2 suitors, and that the Browns were in a tough spot financially with this deal. Baker didn't have much leverage because there were only two suitors and because he's not a superstar, a quarterback in the league. And so it was one of those situations where both sides really probably didn't end up getting what they thought. I forgot to mention it's a conditional fifth round pick that the Panthers are
Could
sending,
be a fourth.
and likely will be a fourth. If he wins this job in 2024, not even next year's draft. So, I mean, it really shows you kind of the state of where the franchise was in Cleveland and what they kind of had to do with this deal. I agree. Baker and the GM Fitterer had their press conference today about the move. Uh, it does seem that Baker kind of understands the opportunity that's here. It's a team on ascending and on the rise, and they just kind of need to get over that hump. Perhaps he could be the guy that does it for them. Fitterer made it clear that this is going to be a fairly equal rep situation between Darnold and Mayfield.
Darnold has the edge there. He knows the offense at
He
least.
does have the edge from the offense, yeah, and that is something that the familiarity and what he's and despite even the turnover at the offensive coordinator spot, he still has been there with Matt Rule and kind of knows what Matt Rule's philosophy is. I still, after all of this, would be very surprised if Baker doesn't win this job.
Agreed.
If Baker doesn't win the job, that says a lot to me,
His
despite
career's
the
over.
advantage that Darnold has.
His career's over. I mean, he is then a penny on the dollar backup if he can't win the job.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be able to take over the reins there and bring this team forward. And as we've said, a lot of it still is going to ride on the health of Christian McCaffrey, despite any of this. But we'll see
Absolutely.
about that. Also, the Seahawks reportedly kind of moving a little bit closer to this Jimmy G
Yeah.
situation. That's his only spot now, right? I mean, outside of potentially Atlanta, but I don't see it. We haven't heard anything about Atlanta pursuing this. It's still weird to me that Mariota is going to be the guy.
Atlanta's
for the whole
in tank
season,
mode.
But
Atlanta's in tank mode, and Ritter may get a chance to show off. I will say, final point of Baker. One of my bold predictions. We always do the bold predictions before. We'll do those sometime early in August for the NFL season. Was going to be that Matt Corral starts more games than any other rookie quarterback. If they had not made the trade, I figured he probably would have been end up starting by like week 3, about that, and maybe have a chance to start the most amount of games. But I don't think
have to rework that one most likely.
I don't.
Right?
I have to find a new bold strategy. For Jimmy G, I thought Colin Cowherd nailed it today. I'm just going to give credit to him. His take on this was, I think the San Francisco 49ers have probably plenty of opportunities to move Jimmy G, but to get the most value, that Seattle, if they're desperate enough, you're going to have to say to them, we need more from you because you are a division rival. I think, Cowherd was saying, like, maybe you could get a second round pick from Seattle for Jimmy G.
Yeah.
Because, we're basically saying, here's a guy who's been to the Super Bowl in the last couple of years, and you're in our own division. And so we have the possibility of us making ourselves look bad. So interesting enough, I'll just say in the end there, I think that wait to see. I gotta wait to see on what exactly goes down with Jimmy G. I'm not going to predict he's going to end up there. I'll just put it that way. I'm just not predicting it. I still think very much so the 49ers would like to see Jimmy G in camp and how he plays. And that film of him throwing the ball around, playing really good. And you never know who could get injured sometime in camp, knock on all the wood, so I'm not just done on that yet.
I can see two sides of this equation. One being sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't. And so
Absolutely.
if you put him in division, at least you know what Jimmy G's about and how, you can maybe attack him. On the flip side, Jimmy knows as personally the Kyle Shanahan system as anybody in the league. And so while sometimes people make too big of a deal about knowledge of other teams because scouts and personnel have such detailed knowledge, especially of their rivals, It would be quite helpful for Seattle to get a guy in there to know some of those minute details and the lingo and language of the Kyle Shanahan offense. But not a whole lot of spots that would make a great deal of sense for Jimmy. Um, I thought New Orleans would be a nice spot for him to go. But all we're hearing is Seattle, and yeah, I agree. If you can get a second for Jimmy, and you're gonna have to eventually move off of him, that you might have to strike while the kettle's hot in that regard, rather than try and wait around for something comparable
Yeah.
down the road. But then again, as Colin has talked about quite a bit on his show as well, 49ers might be in a spot where they're not super comfortable with Trey Lance either. And so they're like, do we hedge here?
You can
Do we hang on to a guy that could potentially be, the backup here?
and normally
I don't know.
normally I would say you can't do that. You got to let your young quarterback have a chance. But I think the 49ers are in a unique position where they were in a Super Bowl. They just made an NFC championship game with this kind of current construct of their core. And they can say, look, yeah, we gave up a ton to get Trey Lance when we could have just drafted a Justin Fields or a Mac Jones. You know what I mean? It looks like.
Yeah.
And maybe even Trey Lance, depending on where he falls on the board. They moved up, remember, all the way to 3. It was 1, 2, 3, quarterback in that draft. And they gave up an absolute fortune to get there. So, yes, there's the pressure to that. But also, I think they had the right to say, if they came out and Shanahan and John Lynch came out and gave a press conference and said, guys, when we drafted Trey Lance, it was the idea of a 10-year plan, knowing this was a kid who was going to need so much water and time and soil to grow and to blossom. You know what I mean? It's not a shot at Trey. Trey could absolutely play for us right now. But Jimmy G right now gives our team the better chance to win. And we have a team right now that we feel like in the NFC could compete for a Super Bowl. We're starting the season with Jimmy G. Yeah. And we'll see what happens.
Trey has their roster is very much ready to win now. Like you have the pressure of like you have to get all the juice out of the orange that you can, and this is their opportunity.
That's the type of stuff where, again, they put themselves in this situation, and and so I think they can wiggle their way out of it, but it's going to take a lot of dancing. And again, there's that opportunity. I don't know Trey Lance's personality well. I don't know if he's comfortable with that, or I don't know if there's people in Trey Lance's camp who are looking at the 49ers like, get him the bleep out of here. Like, give me a chance. Let me have my chance. I can't prove to you to be the starter unless you give me my chance. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, I really don't see what the problem. I mean, this used to be commonplace. Obviously, it's not anymore. But
it's just different.
If they rest him for one more year and get him those reps again, get him even that much more comfortable. Meanwhile, winning games with Jimmy Garoppolo, trying to make a push for the playoffs. It's only 2 years. Like, it's really not that long. I mean,
that's how long Aaron Rodgers sat for.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say, though, Dan, it feels different. And it feels like when you see guys like Justin Herbert come in the second game and just explode, that's the transformational talent. So Joe Burrow, starting of the season, like, oh my God, that guy can play. And especially with how shaky Trey's starts were, it's a tight rope to walk. It's a balance. But I just think so much of it, if I'm the Niners, if I can get a second-round pick from Seattle, I'd absolutely do it right now because second-round picks are really valuable. They're really valuable. And you gave up a second to get Jimmy, and I would argue in the end, your time with Jimmy was successful. He got you to a Super Bowl, got you to another NFC championship game, winning giant playoff games on the road at Lambeau Field. And you get, in return, you paid him his money, and you get a second-round pick back. If Seattle's willing to do that, I don't care. It's a division rival. You'll still kick the crap out of Seattle this year. You should at least. Your roster's better. I think your coach is better. And so you can't be scared of that. But I will say, I do think there's something about John Lynch that goes, we all know the way the NFL works. If X player, again, knock on wood, all of a sudden tweaks their knee and they're out. They need knee surgery in mid-August for a contending team. Jimmy Garoppolo is the name to call. It's the
Right.
name to call. And so you might be able to get a second and more at that point in time. But who knows? They're dancing a thin line.
That is for sure. Finally, to wrap up the bit of news, Gronk, in an interview
Yeah.
today, was asked about his potential return to the field this season, despite retiring very recently. And I mean, take it with a grain of salt, I suppose, but he seemed to put the kibosh on the idea that a return is possible. In the past, he had been a little bit looser with his terms. He had said, I'm never going to say never. But he said, I'm done with football. I'm ready to go into the business world. He has opportunities with his dad and his brothers in the business field. He obviously has opportunities in several other ventures that he could choose to go into. In the interview, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but just his body language, it did seem like a guy that's just very comfortable with his decision. Um, I don't know what you make of it. It's obviously not groundbreaking news, but it's something that people had wondered about, and now he shed a little bit more clarity on that situation.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just gonna be one of those
Not
things
buying it.
where it's not that I'm not buying it, but I think Gronk is still leaving himself open to where, if it's November and it's only a certain amount of games, he'll take the call. And until you don't take the call, I think you have to say, and listen, once you flip flop once, like I said, I believe that Brady retired. I said on our show, I believe you in that first time because it takes a lot to get to that announcement. Once you break that kind of trust, it's like, all right, well, I just don't know. I just don't know. And listen, I think Gronk is saying all the right things, and I hope he is enjoying retirement. And if he's actually retired again, he's a Hall of Famer, and him and Ben Roethlisberger will be sharing the podium together in 5 years.
Yep, for sure. Also, I want to offer a correction from that. That just reminded me from a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the depth chart at tight end for the Buccaneers. I mentioned that OJ Howard was there, but I forgot he actually got traded. So he is a Buffalo Bill now.
Hey,
So
good for the
Cameron
Bills.
Brate and some other dudes. I don't even know who else, but just wanted to offer that correction real quickly. Okay, the NFL or ESPN, I should say, uh, did a survey with the NFL executives, coaches,
Yeah.
owners, and players, and put them all together and compiled the top 10 quarterback list. And this is what they came up with, an interesting list, and we'll kind of offer our thoughts on that as well. But yeah, you can
It's
go.
important to remember, again, just to our listeners, it's just really important to remember. This is not just ESPN writer. They compile
Right.
basically like they sent out a bunch of lists to all these people, and they said, you rank them, rank the top 10 guys. The objective is to find the best players, and they talk about. They say the voters gave us their 10 best players at each position. Then they compiled them, and it's a simple ranking based on those top 10 votes. So again, they asked executives, coaches, players. They don't say if they asked all the executives. They don't say if they asked all the coaches, all the players, but they did a handful of players of each ones.
They said
So
a total of 50 voters.
50 voters. So probably
Yeah.
about 10 of each category to say, give us your guys for the 10 best passers. And I think they say quarterbacks, they word it in different ways, but I think we all know what you mean. Who are your 10 best quarterbacks if you're trying to, win yourself as many games as possible this year?
And they did come out with a list of several other positions as well, starting I think the fifth.
Yes.
So those might provide some good ones for us to kind of go over throughout the summer as well. Here we can take a peek at. But we'll start with the quarterbacks, obviously the most important position. So the first one, the consensus pick amongst all of them compiled together, Aaron Rodgers comes in as number one. Number two is Patrick Mahomes. Number three, Josh Allen. So Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen, top
Yeah.
3. Then Tom Brady. Then Joe Burrow, number 5. Number 6 is Matthew Stafford. Number 7, Justin Herbert. Number 8, Russell Wilson. Number 9, Deshaun Watson. And number 10, Dak Prescott, interestingly enough. So obviously we have some thoughts on this. We kind of discussed our reaction to Chris Sims' top 40 quarterbacks. And in that
Yeah.
reaction, we discussed kind of how we would rank our top 10. And I'm not sure if yours has changed at all, Mark. Mine certainly has some disagreements with this one, but the talk of social media and the talk of several shows on ESPN and elsewhere throughout the last couple days has been the snubbing of Lamar Jackson in this top 10 list. And I know you went on Twitter and voiced your disdain over that as well. That is a surprising one. If you just thought about who you want to start your team with this year, you got to pick a 10 quarterbacks. The fact that Lamar is not on that, quite surprising. I'm not sure how that happened.
I think these lists, again, we don't know everything that went into it, and I certainly know how this game works. I work for a media company, peel back the curtain here, and one of the most important things that you can do right now in the world of media, I'm just peeling back the curtain, is get clicks and scrolls. So clicks and then scrolls, whether it's on your app, whether it's on your web browser on your phone, on your desktop, wherever it is, clicks and scrolls. So I'll just say this. In my just pure opinion, I don't know how anyone can sit there after Aaron Rodgers and what you watched in that playoff game against the 49ers and then watch the playoff game against Mahomes and Allen and how they battled for their teams. They never gave up. They took risks. They were aggressive. Can sit there and say, if I'm trying to win a Super Bowl this year, if my life depends on it, and I need to win a Super Bowl this year, how you could take Rodgers ahead of those two guys.
Yeah,
I think Rodgers is even behind some other guys on this list. I have Rodgers ranked 6th as far as right now, what I would take as far as I need to win a Super Bowl. And this year, my life depends on it. So I'm building my roster off of that, the best of the best at each position. I would go with him. I think there's 5 other quarterbacks I trust right now to get me to a Super Bowl this year ahead of Aaron Rodgers. After everything I've seen from Rodgers in the playoffs, I mean, it's about winning. It's not about throwing a really pretty ball. And yes, he's uber talented, but that collapse against the 49ers where it looked like his level of interest in playing was barely any higher than Kyler Murray's. I just don't see at all how you can put him above those two guys, especially, let alone a couple other guys on this list that I would argue for.
Yeah, I don't agree with Rodgers being a number 1 either. For me, he came in as my number 4 quarterback. So I had Mahomes, Allen, Tom, and then Rodgers. That kind of was my top 4, and then Russell Wilson was right there at number 5. I could see a debate between Wilson and Rodgers. Honestly, it's more of a preference thing, I guess, than anything else. The fact that Dak Prescott, because to me,
yeah,
he wasn't on the bubble for me. In my top 10, I had Lamar at 9, and then I had Deshaun at 10, Derek Carr at 11, Kyler Murray at 12, and Dak at 13.
13's not on the bubble.
I don't see how you put Dak. How is Dak ahead of those guys?
I would imagine
I could see maybe you can make the argument about Murray because Murray hasn't had the success, and there are questionable leadership qualities there.
Yeah.
But I would absolutely take Carr over him, Lamar over him, no question. I mean, those two guys definitely are there.
Dak must have gotten really high ratings from certain groups. My guess it would be the players. My guess is when the players' rankings come in, he was there. He ended up in the top 5 for some people, and that weighted it to where he falls in. And executives have never liked Lamar Jackson, so I'd imagine that's probably where that fell. Is that executives are scared of Lamar Jackson? They're scared of what the Ravens are so confident and have done so well, which is no, we're just going to build our football team around this guy and everything he does really, really well, and we're going to be again, the Ravens are the most unique NFL team. No one else plays like them or looks like them. They're the good teams. Trust me, no one else is going to play like the Texans this year. They're not going to look good. But, in the sense of being a good team. So, yeah, absolutely. Lamar Jackson is a top 10 quarterback. Whether you want him 10, 9, 8, I think it's hard. It's hard for me to put him in the top 7 right now with just other guys, how they're playing, and Lamar coming off a down season. It's harder for me to put him ahead of 7 guys. But if you want to put him 8, 9, 10, I'm 100% comfortable with that. But he's absolutely in that top 10. I go with Kyler at 10 just purely based on the talent. And like Kyler's type of guy that I would feel really good about winning games in the regular season. And then if I'm in the postseason, he is kind of like Deshaun Watson was 2 years ago when, they were up, 21-0 on the Chiefs, 24-0 on the Chiefs in the second quarter. Like,
yes,
when you put that just pure talent on the football field in big moments, you never know what can happen. And Kyler's got a lot of that in him. And so I put Kyler ahead of, I don't have Deshaun Watson in my top 10 right now. Because again, legal stuff aside, I haven't seen him playing long enough. And yet I've seen all of these guys play in the last 2 years. And I have more current belief and data on them than I do on him. So I lean towards that. I have Stafford at 4 currently and Burrow at 5 ahead of Rodgers. If you're wondering who I have ahead of Rodgers, again, that's purely based on if I need these guys, not with their current teams, I'm just picking them to build my team around. I need to win a Super Bowl this year. I like them. I like what I mean, now that Stafford's won a Super Bowl, he absolutely belongs in the conversation with Aaron Rodgers. And I think currently, even though Rodgers is the MVP, currently Stafford, the way he performed in that playoff run, it shed all doubts to me that if Stafford's in big moments, he's going to perform bigger currently than Aaron Rodgers right now. And Joe Burrow, again, I just absolutely all the moxie, all the talent, all the leadership in the world, all the dog. A lot of Zach Wilson dog talk. Joe Burrow has all the dog, way more than Aaron Rodgers in his creepy tattoo.
Yeah, that tattoo, my goodness. It's like Colin Cowherd was spot on with that one, just talking about this so on brand because I think cryptic Aaron Rodgers goes with the cryptic tattoo and make everyone wonder what it's about. PFT
commentator from Pardon My Take said it to me best was, that tattoo looks like what Kyrie Irving thinks his own brain looks like. Like that, I was like, I listened to that. When I heard that, I literally started laughing out loud. I was like, PFT nails it again. Like, but that again, like, I'm sorry. And maybe people are going to say, it's a Bears bias, whatever. I think right now, going into this season with all his retirement talk, not even just talking about the talent around him, just like who you are as a person and as a player currently, I don't trust Aaron Rodgers as much as I trust those 5 other guys to lead a team, grit, determination, moxie, put blood on the line, playing injured to get me to a Super Bowl. He is then the best of that next group because his talent is so undeniable. And maybe I would hope that if I brought him into my group away from Green Bay and my team and built a team around him, he'd be more happy and motivated and you could work with that. But I just can't guarantee that.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Some of these are bonkers, by the way. The lowest ranking for some of these guys. Patrick Mahomes was as low as 5. I don't know who in the world
mind-blowing
has him at 5. Josh Allen was as low as 7.
Makes no sense.
Tom Brady as low as 8. You can maybe argue just based on like talent.
He retired.
I'd still take him as the leader.
Yeah. He would never be 8 on my list.
Joe Burrow was out of the top 10 in his lowest ranking. Youth, okay, maybe, I guess. Stafford out of the top 10 in his lowest ranking. Russell Wilson was out of the top 10 in his lowest ranking. What? Herbert out of the top 10 in his lowest ranking. What?
Yeah,
who's putting?
Who are the 10? I don't know.
Crazy.
Those must be, they interviewed a player from like a Seahawks player who's like, screw this, Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? Like,
got to get him out of the league. Yeah.
And again, that's just the type of stuff you don't know. You'd like to think people in the NFL, players, coaches, executives, are all smart enough to really flesh it out. But I do feel like this is one of those things where fans may know a little bit better, and people, not saying that we're perfect, but I think people like us who are fans first, who then really love to analyze the game and try to put it into some perspective and remove some fandom. I think both of our lists make way more sense than a lot what you're seeing there. And if you don't have some sort of combination in Mahomes and Allen 1 and 2, then I can't help you. Like, I just can't.
Yeah,
I can't help you understand it better.
And just to put a button on it, Lamar Jackson is 37-12 as a starter. That's hard pressed to find someone who wins as much being left off of a list of this caliber, because Dak's record, for instance, not nearly as endearing. All right, Mark, you had this this list that you had seen, and so it prompted you to kind of make a list. I'll let you kind of introduce this next portion that we're going to go through.
Just kind of a fun, silly thing that we want to do here. Again, we're in the dog days of summer and finding things to talk about. I saw a list that was the ranking of the best player in each franchise, and I thought, well, that's interesting, but that can be so overtly subjective. It's hard to really kind of flesh out. So I went with, I said, Dan, why don't I create a list? I'll make a list of, to me, the best quarterback in every franchise's history. And I'll send it to you, and you find the ones you disagree with. So, Dan, if you want to go through the list and say, here's where we agree, like, and quickly go over the ones we agree on. We don't need to spend much time. Then there's a couple that it's like we do have disagreement on, and we can kind of see why we disagree and argue through who may be right, who may be wrong there.
Okay, and I like how you set it up because you put it in there in terms of division. So how about we do this? How about we go through the divisions, and then wherever we have a disagreement, we stop and we discuss, and then we keep going. We keep rattling them off after that. So we'll start in the NFC, and we'll go with the NFC North. The Bears. We'll start right off with a disagreement here.
Yeah,
because you have Mr. Jay Cutler. And this really actually surprised me quite a bit, actually. To me, Sid Luckman is a surefire best quarterback. Now, overall talent, if that's only what you're going off of, I can see the Cutler argument. But Luckman brought 4 championships to the Bears. Was an MVP. He was like an All-Pro 8 years in a row. Like, what gave Cutler the edge in your mind?
I just like Jay Cutler. It's really what it is. It's just I like Jay Cutler. I think so. It's, if you know, my list is good. I waver back and forth. A lot of it's preference, and then a lot of it's like I'll take talent over. Like, to me, I know that if Sid Luckman was around today, and even if you gave him the proper training, like, Jay Cutler's going to be a better quarterback in the modern NFL than Sid Luckman could ever be. Jay Cutler, I also think, is one of those guys who could really translate to previous eras. He's a tough guy, really athletic, can run the ball big. So it's a little more preference. To be honest with you, a large part of it too is it just preference. Like, I think Jay Cutler deserves more credit for what he did with the Bears. I think I'm trying to defend him a little bit more. Sid Luckman, I'm not going to argue too much on that. I think most people would probably go with Sid Luckman. I'm going to go with Cutler to show him love because I do think he is the most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had played the position. And I think he dealt with some really bad decisions. And I think if they would have kept Lovey and get kind of core around and given Jay a little bit more consistency, that Jay could have had an even more illustrious career for the Bears and he is the all-time passing leader for the franchise. I know it's a different NFL. There's some stats to back up Jay being the best quarterback. Yeah, I guess Luckman he's a legend for the Bears, but I'll go with Cutler in that regard.
I got you. Cutler never intercepted 3 passes and threw 5 touchdowns in a
he didn't do that
game. I don't believe that happened.
Part of that's why, and that's again why you have to remember Luckman. Like, talk about a different era. Like, the dude played defense. Like, the dude played defense. So I thought, I'm glad you brought that up because that plays into my, like, all right. As you notice, I go back deep into the woods for some of them because some of them I think deserve to go deep. But for the Bears and their non-history of quarterbacks, I am comfortable saying Cutler's the best.
Yeah, fair enough. Lions, no disagreement there. Matt Stafford. It's
Yeah, easy one, easy one.
yeah, open and shut case. Packers, no, we run into a different one right here.
Ah,
Mark
yes.
says Favre. I say Rodgers. Um,
Listen,
I think we're both going to be able to make good arguments in
yeah,
favor of it. It's going to be hard to.
this is one I
Um,
think you'd see a more of a split, probably 60-40 Rodgers if you polled, you know, 100 or, a couple hundred really big NFL fans, who's the better, or even just Packers fans, who's the better quarterback in franchise history, Rodgers
yeah,
or Favre. Favre, more Super Bowl appearances, both won Super Bowl. Aaron, more MVPs, but Favre, I think, endeared himself to the franchise more. And I think people are now looking at Favre's exit even more in favor of Favre, knowing Rodgers and knowing how Rodgers is kind of handling his exit from the team, and knowing what the Packers do. Listen, I think it's preference for me. I had it on my list of all-time quarterback ranking. Brett Favre is higher than Aaron Rodgers on my list. I think the talent is not that far off. Go look at Brett Favre's highlights from 94 to 01. And everyone is like, we've never seen Patrick Mahomes before. Go watch Brett Favre. Any highlights, big highlights from 94 to like 01. The dude is literally the definition of the gunslinger. He throws the ball at all the weird angles, absolute monster cannon shots, aggressive, played a style of football that was Iron Man-esque. He's got a legendary status in that regard. And so, and again, I think when it comes down to, if you honestly said, Dan Vasquez, the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, you're down by 6, you have a minute and 20 and no timeouts left, Aaron and Brett, I would
yeah,
take
you'd probably
Brett.
take Brett. Yeah,
I would take Brett. I think that alone, for a franchise like the Packers who expect to be in those moments, I think that says a ton. Aaron has a chance, depending on how many more years he plays, to pass Brett. Brett's 508 in all-time passes. That's 4th all-time. Aaron is 5th all-time, which shocked me. I didn't realize he was that high up. 449.
touchdowns.
Yeah, 449. Now in yards, Brett is at 71,000. Aaron probably will never catch Brett. He needs 16,000 more yards. He's at 55. So he needs
4 more years.
4 more years of passing. But and realistically, if he had a 250, 240 touchdown years, he'd pass him in the touchdown. So I think stats wise, you can make the case for Brett. I mean, Aaron, obviously, the biggest thing Aaron has going for him right now, in my opinion, is it looks like he'll only play his career with the Packers. So that endears him to the franchise. And his interceptions, the lack of interceptions are incredible. But I think it's to a detriment now we've seen in the history of his career. He's not as aggressive as you need him to be to lead your team to victories.
It is kind of funny, like how completely opposite they are as players, and to go back to back with them.
Yeah.
Both be Hall of Famers, but both be Hall of Famers in completely different ways. It's kind of remarkable.
Final point I'll make in this as well. You could make the argument, and I honestly believe it, as far as just pure raw talent goes, they may be two of the top 3 or 5 most talented people to just play the position. Like pure talent at playing quarterback. Brett and Aaron are there. I mean, they are there. It's a toss-up. I think the public would lean 60-40 Aaron, but check again in like 20 years on that. I think it may be closer to 50-50. I think Aaron gets a lot of shine right now because he's favored, but I think Brett, to me, is still going to be he's me right now, unless Aaron has an immaculate last couple of years. Brett Favre has had the better NFL career.
That's a fair point with the staying power. I will be interested to see in a couple decades how their legacies are viewed after the dust has settled. Next up, Vikings. No, it is not Christian Ponder. I know many thought that might be it.
Culpepper, I thought about for a half a second. Then I was like, dumb brain.
Yeah.
Then I was like, dumb brain.
Hey, I mean, Jeff George had like 1 or 2 years where he was just absolutely throwing bombs to Randy Moss. But no, it's Fran Tarkenton, and one of my favorite quarterbacks, one of my favorite players of all time. But yeah, the dude revolutionized the position and was the first true scrambling quarterback, scrambling Fran, as it were. Buccaneers. we could have gone some different ways, but Tom Brady does it for us because after this season, it's going to be 3 years with the team, won a Super Bowl to come back to the playoffs again the following year. He's already, established himself as the Patriots era Tom Brady and the Buccaneers era Tom Brady, similar to the way kind of Peyton Manning had his
Yes.
two-phase career. I think it's fair enough to consider Brady a part of the Buccaneers quarterbacks era.
But Tom Brady has thrown so far, basically 9,949 yards. Let's call it 10,000 yards for the Bucs. He's going to play another year. He's going to probably throw for at least 4,000 yards. So you'd argue by the end of this year, Tom Brady will have had 14,000 yards for the Bucs. That will put him most likely second all time behind Jameis Winston, and only behind Jameis by less than 4,000 yards. Jameis is just under 20,000. Tom Brady, by the end of this year, if he throws, give me quick math, 90, 103, 113. If he throws 38 touchdowns, he will have tied Jameis Winston for most touchdown passes in Bucs history. So he's already second all time. So stats wise, he's right there behind Jameis Winston as the all time leader in for them. So you can't really you can't just be like, whoa, the stats. And honestly, what he's done for them, Brad Johnson to me, I would have put ahead of Jameis because he got him to that Super Bowl and won that Super Bowl. Right. And so I think Tom, it's a no-brainer.
I wouldn't say he got that. He got them.
Well, no, but yes, you're right. No, I would say it's a no-brainer that Tom Brady's number one. Jameis, you probably argue too, and it's funny. The Bucs all-time list, you go through, you start looking at all these all-time lists for certain teams, dude. Oh my God, it is. The Bucs are with the Bears for this look of just good. That is just brutal. Quarterback history, just brutal.
Yeah. It's it has not been a good run of quarterbacks in the Buccaneers history. That's for sure. Next up is another one we do not have a disagreement on, and that would be the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton. I would say if 2015 didn't happen, there'd be an argument for Jake Delhomme because of him being the first to bring them to the Super Bowl and being a fixture and kind of them creating the culture there in Carolina and really tasting success for the first time with Jake Delhomme. I think it'd be closer when a couple of years ago now, or just over a year, I should say, we did the top 10 Panthers list with several other beat reporters, kind of compiling the list the same way that ESPN did the top 10 quarterbacks. Delhomme was number 9, and Cam was all the way at number 3. But I think that gap is closed if you take out an MVP season. But it's not fair to take out an MVP season.
Yeah,
the guy was incredible.
And Cam has
certainly the best quarterback.
Cam, just talent-wise, even though he burned very bright very quickly, it's easy to look at that and go, for a young franchise like the Panthers, I think it's going to take a while for a quarterback to be able to eclipse Cam. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think he's got the staying power with the Panthers for a long time. He's not a Hall of Famer. I think if he would have had another 2 years of his peak, maybe another deep postseason run, and maybe another MVP or something like that, you could make the argument for the Hall of Fame for Cam.
I mean, just on the rushing touchdowns alone at the position, how unique that is. I mean, he already has that locked up.
He just fizzled so quickly, so
rapid decline.
Him and
Drew Brees.
Yeah. But a final point on Cam is and I agree. This is stolen from Colin Cowherd. He nails it. Him and Russell Westbrook are the same guy. They're the same guy. Now, Russ will be a Hall of Famer because the basketball's a little different, but they're the same guy.
Yeah, that's very true. You got a major skill set and just didn't have the wins and the
both eccentric too.
Yeah, that's very true. So Saints Drew Brees, no argument there. Atlanta Falcons Matt Ryan, again, no argument there. Seahawks Russell Wilson, no argument there. I know some might try and throw not Rick Meyer. Oh my gosh, Craig. for how long he was there and the success. But no, it's Russell Wilson, no
Yep.
doubt. Cardinals, we come to an impasse here. You put Jim Hart, and I put Kyler Murray, and that's
So this is
that's
my
fairly
opposite of
surprising.
my bias.
I don't think I look. I would have put Kurt Warner, by the way, but I don't know if we can. It's hard because we count Tom, in the Bucks era. It was more like Kurt was brought in so late and had that one magical run,
Yes.
and that was it.
If Kurt would have won
Tom
a
then
Super
came
Bowl,
back and
if
takes
they
them to
would've-
playoffs and does well.
if Kurt would have won that Super Bowl, he would have got it from me.
Yeah.
But my problem with Kurt was he was there the same time that Carson Palmer was there, and they had very similar runs, and Palmer's numbers were better. Now,
Right.
Palmer didn't have Palmer didn't have the playoff success that Kurt did with that one run with the magic of Larry Fitzgerald. But there's other names like Jake Plummer. You could toss that around. But apparently Jim Hart, and again, I didn't know much about Jim Hart. But when you start to look at the stats, you're like, oh, well, he really does dominate the stats for their franchise. And he was their starter for 17 years. I mean, he was the long, so I just couldn't. Yes, I agree that Kyler Murray, given another, especially if he signs his max deal, Kyler Murray's an easy one to slot in, the trajectory to slot in within the next couple of years, and I probably won't argue it. But for right now, it's a little, I'm not high on Kyler. I have a little anti-Kyler thing. And so I'm going to give Jim Hart his due right now.
Yeah. I mean, he had a losing record in his career, and only
that's when quarterbacks just stayed
passes. So that's where I was like, and he threw more interceptions than touchdowns.
Yes, but that's when quarterbacks just stayed with the team, and they just that was your guy.
No doubt. But it also wasn't the 30s or 40s,
No, he's 66 to 83. I mean, he had a long run.
Yeah. No, he did have a long run. But it was also the era where you weren't given as much of a leash on having a 50% completion percentage.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, it's fair. I'm not going to argue too much. He played forever. He's probably, in terms of stranglehold on the franchise, he's there. I think Kyler will certainly be there as long as he's not traded by the end of his career. Because Hart, for all those years, only had 34,000 passing yards. The 49ers cleared Montana. The Rams, we both had Kurt Warner as well. The Cowboys, Roger Staubach. It's not Danny White. It's not Romo.
There were some people I was worried about. They would say the Rams, where does Stafford fit? Stafford would have to win. Stafford would have to stay with the Rams he's got a lot of work to do to pass Kurt Warner, because Kurt Warner went to 2 Super Bowls. So Stafford it's weird to think this, but I think Stafford has a chance to be in that conversation, depending on what his career looks like with the Rams when it's done in 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
He's still young. If he plays to 38, 39, again, that's a whole career with one team.
If he wins another Super Bowl over the next 5 years, maybe wins an MVP, and I'm just saying, don't say it's crazy that could be a legitimate argument for Stafford to have 2 franchises, which is crazy, but it's not that crazy. All right, we move on. Yeah, Staubach.
Yeah, and the reason Brady gets the Bucks isn't necessarily because of what Brady did. It's what what everyone else failed to do.
Yeah, but Brady has done incredible there. So it's
Yeah. But he didn't have a Warner to go up against. If Warner was in the Bucks, we'd put
it's like
Warner
Peyton Manning with the Broncos. It's like Peyton with the Broncos. Peyton is probably the second greatest Broncos quarterback of all time. It's not really close. Problem is you have a goat there with John Elway.
Yeah, exactly. The Giants, Eli Manning, not much of a disagreement there. For those YA Tittle fans, it's not. Yeah,
no, I think I think there's a little bit of a Phil Simms, maybe hardcore older Giants fans might say something, but again, I think Eli wins that 70% of the vote for Giants fans for sure.
Washington is Sammy Baugh, slinging Sammy Baugh.
They're like the Bears. historic franchise, and when you look at their history, it's brutal. I mean, quarterback history just brutal. Theismann, and then the injury. There were times with Williams, and it
Yeah,
just
Theismann was close. Like I would say it's very close there. But
yeah.
I agree. I give the edge to Sammy Baugh as well, especially for how influential he was for his time too. He was kind of ahead of his
Yeah,
time in a lot of ways.
very much so.
The Eagles is another one we have a disagreement with. You have Donovan McNabb.
I
I say
do.
Randall Cunningham.
I
And so
I give you the floor to convince me, because I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities between the two.
there are. There are.
McNabb has beat him in passing yards by 10,000. He's got more touchdowns. He's got less interceptions. Yep. They both played for 10 years. He played more games over the 10 years, Donovan. I thought Donovan, is a great runner. Randall was just as good of a runner as well. So there's some similarities there. It's tight, but the Eagles are one of those weird situations where I think a lot of people would also argue, like, what about Jaworski? What about Ron? Like, where did you go where, like, Cunningham over them? I mean, this was tough for me. I leaned towards Donovan because the stats and being younger, modern game, bigger size. I think Donovan, Donovan McNabb, if he's in the draft this year, like that dude's still really successful in the modern NFL.
Yeah, I'm not in like total disagreement. For me, it was insanely close. It was I went back and forth on that one. Part of it was I thought, I feel like if Randall was the quarterback of the Eagles when Donovan was, their careers would be almost identical. If not, Randall maybe a little bit more elevated. I think Randall was so much ahead of his time, and Randall's teams weren't very good. He didn't have. I feel like he elevated guys a lot more and was a bigger reason for their winning than maybe McNabb was to the Eagles. When you factor in the TO and Westbrook and Brian Dawkins in his prime, like, yes, some absolute beasts. Outside of like a Ricky Waters, I'm not sure that Philly had those dominant players that McNabb was able to work with. So part of that was what kind of went into that for me. And another factor of it was just how spectacular of a player Randall Cunningham was.
Yeah, he deserves his credit.
I guess that's more of a preference thing than anything else to me in terms of like watching his highlights. The guy was so incredibly talented, and he had a good winning percentage with the team, just like McNabb did. But McNabb's got the stats, no question, and McNabb's got the Super Bowl and the championship appearances. McNabb also had Andy Reid. So a lot of that, I feel like when it comes down to it, they're relatively a wash. Stats-wise, Donovan gets the edge. I think overall talent, Randall gets the edge.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of landed on it. And it made for a good conversation.
It's funny. I will say, I think that I think McNabb, part of it for me was too, is like McNabb was that era of football that I just fell in love with football and like watching it being in 2001, 2002, being 12 years old. And like McNabb was so good and electric, and those Eagles teams in their NFC championship runs and that final Super Bowl run. I have maybe a little soft spot for McNabb as well, but I think he deserves that spot. And I think it'd be very close. I think if you polled Eagles fans, it'd be close. I think it'd be, 40, 30, 40, 20, maybe, with Jaworski, Cunningham, and McNabb. I think it'd be very, very close.
For sure. Yeah.
Another close one is up next.
Yeah. The next close one comes to us with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it is close, and it's not at the same time for me. It's kind of one of those weird ones. I've always maintained that in terms of talent and just general quarterback play, Roethlisberger's the clear best. But I mean, you got to give Bradshaw credit for winning 4 championships.
Yeah.
I mean, that's That's not an easy feat. And despite having the best defense of that generation, they still were able to win 4 titles. So you got to make it a somewhat close battle just because of that alone. But when you look at the stats, I mean, it's not even close. It's like
I think,
Ben is so
yeah,
much better.
part of it is I think even Terry would admit that Ben is the better Steelers quarterback.
Yeah.
Like that,
And he has acknowledged that.
and I think if Ben had only gotten one, then you have to. I think you have to stay with Terry. But as soon as he gets two and multiple, especially in a modern NFL, where I think it's maybe harder to win multiple Super Bowls in a way. I mean, maybe Tom's proving it's not, but
And being such a vital reason to that second one.
yes,
I mean, he
was
almost single-handedly won it for them at the end of the game there.
Ben developed. Ben from Super Bowl one to where Ben's career ended. I mean, he went from Terry Bradshaw, like a game manager with a big arm who could find a way to help you win, to no, this dude is a legit top 3, top 4 quarterback in the NFL at all times that he was playing at his peak. All right, the next one, Dan, I think this one is one, again, it feels like a little bit like the Cardinals. Like we need to have this conversation again in a couple years. But right now, to me, it's Joe Flacco for the Ravens.
Yeah, I agree with you too. Because for all of the mundanity, if that's a word,
Yes, I agree.
that he provided, he's never a sexy pick for like anything.
Yeah.
He was a really solid player for them. He was a huge part. I mean, he earned the respect of everyone in the league, especially in the AFC North, for being a quarterback that could live up to those rivalries and the toughness. And that 2012 playoff run, one of the greatest playoff runs that a quarterback has ever had. And so you got to give him credit for that. Despite their, having some legendary defenses, he was a huge reason for that championship team that year. And so you got to put him there because he got them over the hump. I mean, Trent Dilfer won despite Trent Dilfer, and he's even acknowledged that. Like that defense was all worldly. The Ravens won in large part in a lot of ways because of Flacco at big times. So you got to give them the edge for that. And really, I mean, by the way, we considered the Ravens their own, despite them technically being the old Browns.
Yeah, the Browns are the Browns.
We're counting the old Browns and the new Browns as one. The Ravens are their own thing, just because of the differences in the franchises.
And we think most people think that way as well.
Correct.
Like when you think of Jim Brown, you don't think Ravens great. Like he is a Brown, and even though they're technically that same franchise, as soon as they renamed themselves, it was like they rebooted and started their own thing. And as soon as the Browns came back, then it's like, all right, they just pick up the history of what was the Cleveland Browns as well. Moving on, Dan, the next one to the Bengals. I think, again, this is a tricky one. I went with Ken Anderson, 15 years, all-time passing leader. He shares yards. Dalton's got a couple more touchdown throws than him. He threw a lot more interceptions than Dalton, but I mean, again, a guy that helped the Bengals be pretty relevant at times during a really rough stretch. I think it's kind of a toss-up. If you want to go Boomer, Andy, Carson, or Ken, I mean, I wouldn't fight you too much. Carson is, to me, very much, his stats, what he did in 6 years is so much of like, well, that's the modern NFL. And he's, I think, even with Joe Burrow, still the most talented guy the Bengals have ever had. He's just such a good talent. But, I mean, he only played there for 6 years.
Yeah. And, I think Palmer would be the close second for me, based on what he did and the talent level. But yeah, it's Ken Anderson. To me, he's the one of the biggest snubs of the Hall of Fame at the quarterback position. Obviously, other positions, Roger Craig, I think, might be the number one greatest non-Hall of Fame player. But Kenny Anderson, I think, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and so thus he deserves to be the greatest Bengals quarterback. For the Browns, this was pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, obviously, you didn't have anyone to pick from for the last 30 years. Bernie Kosar was the only other one in consider,ation in my view, but it's
he was the first name that came to my head, and then I was like, that's not right. And I went back, I was like, oh, that's right. Otto Graham.
Yeah. Handful of championships for Otto Graham, and just an absolute legend in terms of the lore of the NFL.
Baker is
out of
the
Rams, that
4th
guy.
all-time leading passer for the Browns.
Yeah, that's
And
that doesn't surprise me. That's
and
kind of
so
crazy.
and
He
so
played 4 years.
yeah, 4th all-time.
Wild. The Colts is Peyton Manning, and it's a shame because Andrew Luck is so freaking good. If he played for the Texans, he'd be the easy shoe
He
in
would.
there. But
He would.
it's 100% Peyton Manning all day. Texans, Matt Schaub, corn on the Schaub, as my fantasy team was for many years.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those. So it's hard because I think Deshaun Watson. It's one of those things where I just don't know if Texans fans want to claim him. If I was a Texans fan, I wouldn't want to claim him at this point in time. I think it's.
But also, he just didn't. He didn't play that long for that. I mean,
he didn't like. He led him on.
If we went to a Super Bowl or like a couple championship games, then you could be like, all right, well, he did so much in a small amount of time, but he didn't.
But I think Matt Schaub is the right choice. I think he's the right choice.
Yeah. The Titans, and we're counting this as the Houston Oilers as well.
Yes, they get
this is where we disagree.
So I understand. I understand you have Warren Moon and I go Steve McNair. So I love Warren Moon. I am a huge Warren Moon fan. Steve McNair, though, is the type of guy, do I feel like, represents the franchise like in a way of like, it's tough. I may be in the minority here, but I think this is one of those where you might actually, if you interviewed a bunch of people on this one, I think it could be really, really close, 50-50. I think either is a great choice. And I think that it's again, I guess personal, like I watched Steve McNair for all those years and in that MVP season with a co-MVP with Peyton Manning and who he was as a player and as a person. It's tough, but I went with Monero over Moon, but I know Warren Moon's the better player, so it's a weird choice. I know.
I mean, yeah, Moon's a Hall of Famer, McNair's not, and so that's really that is my argument for it.
You're probably right.
That is actually the end of our disagreement. So we'll rifle through the end here.
Okay.
And then I have some breaking news for you.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it.
So don't look it up because
I won't.
I'll let you be surprised by this.
I won't.
It involves the Chicago Bears. The Jaguars have Mark Brunell there. We both do. That's pretty clear.
Yep.
I'm going to say in about 2 years, Trevor Lawrence is going to be that guy. In that category.
Give it end of the rookie contract.
Yeah. David Garrard had some good years with them, though. I don't know if Mark Brunell necessarily dominates in this department. Byron Leftwich had a couple good years, but I would say Garrard is close. Chargers, Dan Fouts, we agree on that one, although certainly Philip Rivers has a case, but I think we both agree Fouts had the stats and the success. Rivers just never got over the hump ever.
It's very
Fouts,
close.
it's not like he won a Super Bowl, but he had success for sustained
and Fouts,
success.
It's hard because it's kind of like if Fouts is in the Hall of Fame, Rivers should be. You know what I mean? It kind of equal out. But then it's also one of those things where it's like that's why the NFL Hall of Fame is tough because when Fouts retired, what he had done was so mind-boggling. Now we see guys like Rivers all the time throw up the
4,000 yards.
So, I think Fouts, to me personally, if I was a Chargers fan, I would lean towards Fouts as like our historic better quarterback. But Rivers is right there.
Very close. The Chiefs, Mahomes.
Yeah.
And that's probably not debatable, although obviously the success of Len Dawson can't go unnoticed. It's just, Mahomes is already.
He's done enough already.
The franchise leader, and they'll use so many things. The Raiders, Kenny Stabler. Obviously, there have been guys, the Rich Gannons, the Plunkett's.
Well, Derek Carr has the stats, but you just can't take that. That's why you can't just look at the stats.
Right. The championship and, Derek Carr doesn't win games while smoking cigarettes in the game. So until he does that.
But I'll tell you what, though, Carr has a chance because
definitely does.
Played there.
He's got to win a title, though.
7 years, Stabler 9. He's already got all the stats. And I think he doesn't necessarily have to win a title, but he's one of those, if he plays another 5 years with the Raiders, another couple playoff runs, because Stabler also played a time with Madden and the Raiders. Like,
Yeah, yeah, the
It's
dynasty
the
of it.
rate, like what Derek's been able to do with the franchise that's just not what they used to be. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah,
considered a lower level franchise now. I think that does say something. So he's got a chance,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he's gonna have to just really keep blowing you away and play certainly over 10 years with the franchise for me to feel more comfortable going that direction.
Fair enough. The Broncos, John Elway, no question.
Easy,
Patriots, Tom Brady, no question.
easy.
The Bills, Jim Kelly, that's also pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, again, it's
Although,
another one of those.
obviously in a few years,
It's
Josh
that's
Allen.
another one because let me look up where those stats are at already.
It's just
Because
crazy to go to
obviously
4 straight Super Bowls. It
it
blows
is.
my mind that that's possible.
Obviously, Jim's a Hall of Fame talent. He's got great stats,
Yeah.
35,000 yards. He was there for 10 years, 160 games, 237
And he
touchdowns.
was Buffalo, right? Like
Yeah.
he embodied
Now, Josh
Buffalo.
Allen, in his short time, I mean, his stats are already by this time next year, he will be the third all time in everything in Buffalo behind Jim and Joe Ferguson. Well, that's an interesting thing for
Who's
the Bills.
I don't even know who Joe Ferguson is.
Listen to this. Joe Ferguson from 19, he was their quarterback from 73 to 84. So 9 years. Threw for 27,000 yards.
Well, 11. That'd be 11 years, right?
11 years. And then it went straight into Jim Kelly. He literally, there's only a 2-year break from him and Jim Kelly. They almost had really solid, stable quarterback play for 23 years, really,
Wow.
with the Bills.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
But it drops off really drastically after Josh Allen because then it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Tyrod Taylor's in the top 10. Yeah, I mean, it gets ugly quickly for the Bills. But Jim Kelly still holds that. Josh Allen is on his way to passing him. The trajectory's there, but not yet.
Dan Marino with the Dolphins.
Easy.
And Joe Namath with the Jets. It's crazy that we're there. You could probably maybe, I don't know. Like, could you make an argument that Chad Pennington has a case to be made?
Well, let me look. I'm going to check first with I just want to see. I forget about Bob Greasy. So yeah, Marino, Greasy, Tannehill's third on all that list. I mean, Marino's obviously number one, but in my head, I kept thinking to myself, there's no one close. But I mean, Bob Greasy's a real quarterback.
Close.
Let me look up the Jets. Let's do Jets real quick. I have it all. It's all through Pro Football Focus too, where I'm Pro Football Reference. Excuse me, I'm getting all of this stuff from. All right, the Jets. Namath is the leader in everything. Ken O'Brien is second. He played 8 years.
Yeah.
24,000 yards. Richard Todd is third. And then Chad Pennington. I would go Pennington probably second because his stats. Ken O'Brien's got much better stats for all things considered, and only played 2
I honestly
years
forgot
more.
about Ken O'Brien. I think you still got to go with Namath and what the Super
Namath
Bowl
is
win
number one. Absolutely.
Yeah, just how important that was. So that wraps it up. We only had a few disagreements there, and it's an interesting conversation. Are you ready for this breaking news? No, I'm excited to tell you. It's not a bombshell. It's not anything unreal. But the Bears have a new wide receiver in town. They traded for N'Keal Harry, the former first-round pick. They send a seventh rounder, a 2024 seventh rounder, to New England in exchange for N'Keal Harry, who is on the final year of his rookie deal and will be an unrestricted free agent next year. So Bears had a big body. It's not. I don't hate the move. I like it.
A 2024 seventh rounder. What a disaster for the Patriots. You go from drafting this guy, Tom Brady, as a first rounder to, it's one of those things too, where the Bears hope, he doesn't have the pressure of being number one. He doesn't have the pressure of being in New England, maybe in your system and you're and you're taking a flyer. I mean, that's a flyer. Seventh round pick's probably not going to make your roster. So I'm willing to give up seventh round picks for a guy to bring him into camp right here before it starts. Yeah, I really do like that move. If N'Keal Harry could come on in and be a big body wide receiver at the goal line, and you have certain packages for him, and to maybe be a third target for Fields, Mooney is your number one. I don't hate that at all. Seventh rounder.
They needed size too. I mean, they were lacking size in the receiver room.
If you give up anything more than that, it could be a little questionable, but interesting too that the Patriots just willing to dump him at that point. That must have just gotten sour. Must have gotten bad there with his agent. He didn't want to be there. He probably had that first round pick energy of like, I deserve this or whatever. And, he gets a chance to come to a place where there's not a lot of options to throw the ball to. So I like it.
Wow, this is interesting. JJ Zachariason said that N'Keal Harry is younger than Velus Jones, the Bears rookie wide receiver.
That's funny. 24 years old. Yeah. Velus
Wow.
Jones, he was a fifth year and he had some time, I think with the COVID years too.
It's I don't know how years work anymore. It is crazy.
But you know what,
you
though?
see some
All
of
of a
these,
sudden, you start to kind of like the look of that. If you have Mooney as your one, who's very much a Diggs type of number one, not small, but very fluid, kind of that OBJ body with Jones, who is your absolute kind of what's his name from San Francisco. He's your bigger slot guy who you're going to get the ball in his hands in different ways.
Like Brandon Ayuk or
no, what's his name? The one who everyone
Debo?
loves. Debo. He's a Debo
okay.
body.
Yeah.
He's more physical, stout, almost looks like kind of like a running back. Him in your slot. And if N'Keal Harry can develop into anything to be a third option on the other side as a big target, then, absolutely 24 years old. You take a shot at him. If he doesn't make your roster, you wasted a seventh rounder. That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I mean, this can't hurt you. You're never gonna.
Good move by Poles. Look at that. Bears news to end it. Let's go. Bear down.
That's right. Always good. Got to throw some of that in there for sure. But that's been fun. We had a lot to go over today, and so it was a jam-packed show.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more to look forward to as training camp is about 2 weeks away. So we're going to start to get a lot of those reports, a lot of news, see some of these quarterback competitions shape up. And we'll obviously have a lot more movement going on in various ways. We'll see what happens with Jimmy G. But yeah, that was a good one. Any final words, Mark, before we end the show here?
No. Just keep staying tuned. We may have a break here or there as we kind of finish up our summer and before we dive headfirst, because we don't want to miss. Once August starts, we don't want to miss shows. We want to be with you from August through the end of the Super Bowl. So however you're following us on Twitter, on YouTube, on our Facebook page, just stay posted and we'll keep you posted. And football season is so close.
So close. We can taste it. Crazy. It's already here. Oh, and we're going to have the NFL Top 100 coming up pretty soon, right?
That'll be fun to rip apart.
So much.
Rip that apart.
Let's do it. All right, guys. We'll see y'all here soon. And just stay safe out there.